Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Sarah Greenbaum. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Curator at Dance Place, a dance theater and school for dance located on lands of the Powhatan, Piscataway, Pamunkey, and Anacostan peoples known as Northeast Washington, D.C. I must acknowledge that as we're watching tonight, we're still in a global pandemic, and that Black people across this country continue to face systemic and institutionalized racism and violence, including right here in DC. We're also in the midst of uncertainty as we await the results of the presidential election. There is no doubt that we are in a challenging time, which will inevitably set the tone of our discussion tonight. I'm grateful that you made space to be here with us for tonight's event called Where Am I? A panel of perspectives on persistence and optimism. This panel was produced in partnership with American University. Rather than espousing performative positivity, we've invited the incredible artists on tonight's panel to speak to persistence and optimism in relationship to the realities and challenges of the field and the world today. You can participate in a discussion with your fellow audience members in real time in the chat box to the right of the video if you're watching on the Dance Place website. We will take audience questions from this chat throughout, and we look forward to hearing from you. As you are watching tonight, please keep in mind that there may be instances where Wi-Fi signals fluctuate, sound may go in and out, or we may experience a challenge that our team hasn't planned for. We thank you in advance for your patience as we navigate the realities of this virtual setup. If you're experiencing any difficulties, sometimes refreshing your browser will help. Thank you to TRJ Bridges for providing ASL interpretation for us tonight, and to our interpreters, Trisha and Vernice. Dance Place is happy to offer this virtual programming free of charge. We continue to pay artists in our presentation series, our teaching faculty, and all of our staff, in spite of losing nearly all of our earned income during our physical closure. If you are able to donate to support our organizational stability now and in the future, you can do so by following the link in the chat. I'm now happy to introduce Erin Foreman-Murray. Erin is a contemporary dance artist who focuses her creative research on improvisational performance practices. She is a senior professional lecturer and the director of dance at American University. She is also the facilitator for tonight's panel. Erin, it's great to see you, and I'm happy to hand it off to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone, and good evening. So here we go. Let's have a conversation. We know that this is a challenging week inside of a challenging fall, inside of a challenging year. And while here in the US, we are anxiously biting our nails today, awaiting the outcome of the presidential election, the global coronavirus pandemic and the national pandemic of racism continue to roll on. In the performing arts, at the heart of what we do is bring people into a kind of sacred space. We invite you into the theater, for instance. We invite that you turn off your phones, turn off the news, and slow your breath in a darkened room, suspended for a moment with others who are doing the same thing, finding stillness. Not to escape, but to consider, to reflect, to be turned on, to reactivate. While the mission in the performing arts hasn't changed, the means have, right? At least for now, at least for many of us. So how do we keep going? How do we make plans for an uncertain future? That's the question we want to talk about tonight. We're going to have a conversation about hope. We're going to have a conversation about resilience, not necessarily because any of us can assure you that everything's going to be okay, but instead we'll talk about how we search for persistence, optimism, hope, resilience. So this evening we are joined by 5 extraordinary dance artists from the DC metro area. I'll ask each of them to tell us a little bit about their work and their artistic practice as they join us. And they'll be thinking about what dance is for them. So let's start. I'm going to invite Jessica Denson to join us.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Tricia. My name is Jessica Denson, and I am calling in today from the ceded lands of the Nacotchtunk people, about 4 blocks from the Anacostia River in Southeast DC. I use she, her pronouns. And I am an interdisciplinary artist. In terms of my dance practice, I utilize dance to confront, to cope as a coping mechanism, and as an expression of love. I'm also an employee at Dance USA. I am the board liaison and office manager. I've been there for 3 years on and off. Prior to that, I worked mainly in music. So I was a house manager at a local performing arts jazz venue. And so I've always been in positions where I support artists to do their best creative work, and that is what fulfills me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm going to invite Anastasia Johnson to join us next.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anastasia Johnson. I use she, her pronouns. I am a dance artist, educator, and choreographer and artistic director of my company, AJ Collabs. As an educator, I focus more on enhancing the youth through enrichment and interdisciplinary activities. My work stems from what I see, what I learn, what I experience. And currently, dance for me is how I simply get through my day.
Indeed. All right. I would like to welcome Shruti Mukund.
Hi, everyone. Very good evening. I am a dancer, educator, mom, and an arts administrator based here in the DC area. And my training has been in Bharatanatyam. And I found my love for dance increased because I chose to become an arts administrator. And for me, it's very satisfying when I can find ways to support the dancers, the artists, and find ways to spotlight and elevate them. I run the Indian Dance Educators Association, which is a service organization for Indian classical dancers based here in the DMV area, and also support my sister who runs Natya Bhumi, and her name is Shruti Mukund, also based here in Maryland. Dance for me is my center, my fallback, part of my identity. Dance brings me joy and sources of employment. Let's get real here. And then dance is where I find my culture, my religion and tradition. And the first thing when we had the lockdown in March, the only thing I could think of doing was to run a Zoom, like Bollywood, like Zumba class online, just for friends, so that we could just find a way to be together in these tough times, but through dance. Excited to be here.
Thank you for being with us, Shruti. So next, we're going to welcome Estela Velez de Paredez.
Good evening, everybody. Hi. Thank you, Erin. I'm Estela. I am the artistic director of Furia Flamenca, a flamenco dance company. I'm a flamenco dance teacher, choreographer in the area. I also wear a different hat at different times during the day. So while I teach dance and perform, my other career is in the legal section, and I am actually a veterans law judge currently, working for the Department of the VA and taking care of veterans' claims, disability claims, adjudicating them, and also conducting hearings. Dance for me is what feeds my heart. It's my way to celebrate life. I always have said I have two careers, one that feeds my brain intensively and one that brings joy and feeds my heart. Without dance, I don't survive. It is what keeps me going and actually wakes me up every morning with a smile on my face. And I cannot imagine not having it as part of my life and sharing that not only with audiences, but students alike and family. So I am excited to be here and share my perspectives on all things dance related. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Estela. And next we will welcome Britta Joy Peterson.
Hey, y'all. My name is Britta Joy Peterson. My pronouns are she, her. I'm so thrilled to be with this incredible group of people. Dance for me is my way of knowing, my way of learning, my way of being, my way of relating to the world and to the people and non-humans in the world. Dance is a choice, and a daily choice. And when I fail to choose it, it chooses me. I am a choreographer, and I'm an educator, and I'm a collaborator. I am currently an artist in residence at Dance Place, woo-woo. And also I'm on faculty at American University. AU is the reason that I'm in DC. And so I'm grateful to my colleagues and my students for bringing me to the East Coast. And yeah, that's it.
Fabulous. Well, welcome everybody. Let's dive in. So I would like to start by asking Estela and Anastasia if you would talk a little bit about how you are reimagining artistic practice right now. What does that look like? Like, what does it look like to be dancing, making? How are you thinking differently about artistic practice these days inside of a pandemic?
Who starts? Can I start? Do I start? I'll start. All right. So March 16th is an infamous date, March 16th, 2020 for me. Until March 15th, I actually was leading the flamenco dance program at the Joe Motion Dance Center. That is where I was based for the past 22 years in terms of teaching, starting as a student teaching, and then my dance company being in residence. And March 16th changed my world, as it did for everybody of us, I believe. I had the luck, for a lack of a better word, that prior to the pandemic, I had already started kind of going into the virtual world of teaching. I had a student, company member of mine, who was going to relocate, and she did not have classes, flamenco classes in her area. So she was very adamant that she could not stop dancing or doing flamenco. So she basically guided me through setting up virtual classes for her so that she could tune in and log in and take classes alongside in a small home studio that we have. So for the previous year and a half prior to the pandemic, I did that for her and with her, and she was an integral part of our classes at our home studio. So the transition to the virtual world for me was almost seamless. So I went from one student to 10 or 12, right? Easy. My thought at the time, got this squared away. And little did I know, or little did I realize at the time, how much energy your students feed you in the classroom day by day. You take that for granted until the moment that you don't have it. And you don't realize how much harder it is to teach a class in a vacuum, a live class in a vacuum, which it was a deafening silence for me. And that is kind of weird to say when I do flamenco, which is one of the loudest things you can do as a dance, right? But I found myself in a room by myself in what I was used to being in an environment that brought me so much joy. And all of a sudden, it felt daunting and it felt intimidating. And it took a lot of energy and effort, a lot of adapting, a lot of trying to figure out. I had one student and I could do one student, but how do I do 12 students and bring them essentially to feel like they're standing next to me in my studio with me and experiencing this? It took a while to adjust. We have finally, I think, found a good way to make those classes as close to in-person classes as possible, not without stumbling like everybody did along the way with, we got this tech issue, that tech issue, I'm not ready, not enough bandwidth, all of those things. But at the end of the day, the most important thing was being able to find a way to recapture that sharing of energy that you give to your students when you are teaching at the same time that they give you and they feed you as a teacher, as while you are doing this class, and finding a way to replicate that. And you go through all the motions. We envision and put into motion interactive classes. This is what we do. So unmute yourself. Try that step for me. Show me how you're doing it. We have multiple cameras now. One is full body. The other one focuses just on the feet, because with the footwork, they have to be able to see the feet. I can no longer just have them look through the mirror. What I was surprised to find, and I hate to use the word surprise because we shouldn't be as human beings surprised at the kindness of the world that we live in. But I will say that I was surprised, but delighted to see how everybody just came together, not in a physical sense that we took care of, right? Getting us reconnected through the camera, but we got together to help one another through the struggles, and the flexibility that ensued, the accommodation, the patience that people exercised was a teaching experience for me, an extreme type A personality that it has no patience. I found myself learning a lot from this experience and those students of mine and the people with whom I interacted, and I tried to continue to bring dance to them through these trying times. How to be patient and how to be flexible and how to be accommodating, more so than you struggle to be and aspire to be on a daily basis. So it's been a growing experience, and it's been a trying experience, but it's been a fabulous experience in so many ways. It got me connected to students that have moved out of the area, as far as Denver, California, Philadelphia. All of a sudden I started getting all these emails. Oh, I want to take your class. I want to take your class. And it's been a joyful experience. It's taught me to be more adaptive. I always thought I go with the flow and I adapt. Boy, did I really need to put that into practice for the past few months. But I will look back to 2020 as a year of extreme growth and continued growth. Anastasia, I'm going to stop there and give it to you at this point.
It definitely has been a roller coaster, to say the least. The beginning, my date was March 13th, so I was a little bit a couple days before you, but March 13th was definitely a change for me. That was the news that we weren't going to go back into the building anymore, and that everything was just it was so unknown. So I think that I was just kind of lost. I didn't really have many feels outside of like, oh wow, this show got canceled. Oh wow, I'm not performing in this. I don't have a rehearsal. In a way, like I said, it was a roller coaster. Times I was like, I'm glad I actually have a break and can sleep. And other times, like, I have nothing to do. So maneuvering through going to virtual classes, starting rehearsals online, and seeing how that transitioned. Some were very successful, some weren't as much. Seeing how the beginning of how people were starting the virtual performances, in my opinion, started off very rough. I think we're getting to a much better place now of like engaging audiences and presenting work in a different way. I just kind of came to the realization if I didn't want to get left behind, I had to step up what I already know and what I thought I knew, and started to do more. Started to invest in new equipment, ring lights, tripods, computer stands, transforming my room for virtual teaching. It was definitely just researching, learning, adapting. Definitely became overwhelming at times. Because there was some people that already were in this dance film world that already had these things, but I don't think, well, I can speak for myself. I don't think that we gave them as much credit or acknowledgement of how much it took to go through this virtual and digital world. So us learning things like filming, editing, and things like that has definitely been a whirlwind for me. But I'm trucking along.
Anastasia, I'm going to follow up and ask you another question. You talked about how that felt overwhelming at times. To learn so many things, it takes a lot of energy. Like, what did that do in terms of your energy, and how do you move through that moment of feeling like, overwhelmed?
I think that I kind of reevaluate what I wanted to grow in. I think as a dance artist, I was like, it's not really my focus right now, maybe not performing, but I definitely wanted to, I felt this as a great and rewarding challenge as a choreographer and an educator, definitely. Because we still had to, at my job at Dance Place, the after school manager and also a teaching artist, and we still had summer camp. So figuring out how we have a whole 6-week Monday through Friday summer camp with kids was definitely a challenge. Figuring out Zoom meetings, learning about Snap Camera and how to reverse and mirror yourself, and so just isolating things instead of. I feel like before the pandemic, I was trying to wear all hats at the same time, and I was like, that's not going to work here. I kind of need to figure out what I want to focus on and try to excel in that. So I kind of put the dance artist on the back burner. Summer was definitely heavy and focused on the educator fact of it, learning Zoom, learning Google Classroom, things like that. And then once I felt like I got a hang of that, I was like, okay, now I can step back into my choreographer role and start rehearsing with my company and start thinking of ideas of how to present work and things like that. After also seeing different performances and seeing what people were doing, so what I liked, but I felt like I can do better, things like that. So taking the time to isolate my roles.
That's great. Has anybody else run into that moment in the last 8 months where you go like, there's just not enough energy or enough money for equipment, or like, what do you do when you run into that barrier, that feeling of there's not enough? What happens in that moment for you?
Actually, for me, it wasn't about the dance as much as I got laid off in the end of July, and among other people at my company, obviously because, the organization's budget comes from ticket revenue, and there aren't any shows and no ticket sales. And it was funny, I kept expecting that to happen, but then when it actually did happen, it was just like, really, it did happen. Like, now what do I do? And I felt for the longest time like I'd identified myself as my job, what I do. I did grassroots marketing, and then I was doing like audience curation and things like that. And I really enjoyed my job. I would wake up with a smile on my face, and I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to like fall apart? Like, what's going to happen to me? But then, you know, at the end of the day, I woke up the next morning, life still went on. My kids were there, my dog's there. Like, you know, you still have to find a way and find your center and then find a way to go forward. And I thought I would be, I'm not type A, but I love to be busy. Like, I love to have things on my calendar. Like, I love to be places. I wanted to see every show in town. I wanted to do dance, theater, music, everything, you name it. I wanted to be everywhere. And then suddenly I was like, wait, I don't actually have to do that. I can go from my dining room to my backyard and read a book. It's okay. I give my it's been a lot of introspective time, and also about giving myself permission not to have to be productive, not to have to be a slave to my calendar. Like, that's not the epitome of my efficiency or my capacity. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the nap ministry on Instagram. I've been following that a lot and trying to internalize that. It says give you permission to allow yourself to take a nap. It's good. It's okay. Like, you know, we kind of get caught up in this sort of even though I worked for a nonprofit and I was like, I'm choosing this alternate lifestyle, I was still living a capitalistic lifestyle. And so that's been sort of like this unlearning, like shedding of that kind of stress, and saying, how can I go forward? How can I be available for everybody around me and still heal myself?
My experience was a little bit different, and maybe on the opposite side of Shruti's, because of what I do during the day, my daytime job as a judge, which is a slightly, believe it or not, isolative job. You're viewed in a very different light because of this power that you hold as a judge and what everybody thinks of, you know, what you can do. And you know, you do a ruling and you change people's lives, right? So your job becomes very isolative. Our job, the minute that we closed up, became fully virtual. I started doing hearings from home, just like you see on TV, that there's arraignments from, you know, via video. We did all that. I was doing all that. My daytime job never stopped. It changed because now the people who I worked with, I never saw. It was all on computers. So I now was married to a computer more so than when I was doing my legal job in person on a daily basis. So for me, it was the fatigue of really not stopping, not being able to stop, not having that downtime, and always being in front of a computer. How do I get that energy to be on a computer, in front of a computer, doing hearings, doing this, managing attorneys, making decisions that are life-changing for people on a daily basis, and then find the energy to feed my students through also the lens of a computer, because I no longer had them in person. And you reach that moment of fatigue, not so much physical, but mental, because it's the same. I don't go anywhere. I went from my desk to just in front of another computer, and it was constant. And in positions of leadership, we are seen more as feeders. I find myself that people look to me for me to guide them, for me to energize them, for me to solve their problems. That all takes a lot of mental energy. And then I saw my physical side start to be a little affected. But when do you take the time when now all that you do is in front of a computer? It was really tough to kind of strike a balance. I turned to my dogs. For me, it was my puppies. I have two beautiful dogs that I never walked because I was never home between my daytime job and dance. And now I was home. So for me, it became the moment of walking my dogs. They now love me a little bit more. And that's how I actually started finding that balance and kind of like drowning out and finding that moment where I could be within myself so that I could continue to give and energize those around me.
So I think we need to pause for just a moment while we change interpreters. Welcome, Trisha. So I want to continue along that line and ask Jessica and Britta to talk about what gives you hope, or specifically in the last 8 months, where have you been finding hope and ways to sustain yourself and your artistic practice?
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Britta. Well, first, for me, I forgot to say earlier that I'm also a dance educator at Sitar Art Center in Adams, Morgan, and I've been there for 5-6 years now. And we did switch to virtual shortly after everything went lockdown. And working with kids, I mean, it's a bit cliche, but there really isn't anything like it. I teach from early childhood, so getting to wiggle with 4 and 5-year-olds is the best, and all the way up the age ladder. So having that time to connect with the kids that really need it right now, it's so meaningful and it's so important, especially right now where they're not getting the interaction, they're not getting the ability to use their physical selves and to express themselves, and to just have that time has been giving me the most joy personally, and makes me hopeful that we're going to get through this together. And we're going to have to do it for them. We have to keep showing up for our students, and that includes, the university AU students as well. Also, what gives me hope is the resilience of the artistic field for all of us in our practice. I see it so much with the artists that I work with companies that I work with through Dance USA, that it doesn't matter what budget size these organizations were, everyone has been deeply affected, and it's striking to see what's happening, and yet we're coming together as a community and really leaning on each other and learning from each other and being authentic with each other, and just finding ways to make those connections that possibly weren't there before because of systemic inequities. Folks are really needing to find ways to make those connections and make the language work. And I use language meaning our artistic speak, our expressionism, all of those things. And so knowing that those bridges can be, or those gaps can be bridged, has also been giving me lots of hope.
I feel like I'm also going to say something that sounds like a bit of a cliche, but I really, really mean it. I think that the thing, hope is tricky because it seems like a big thing. It seems like a big plane, like a jumbo jet that you have to fly. And what I'm realizing is that hope is a daily commitment. Like I keep thinking about these smaller bite-sized pieces, rather than trying to pilot the jumbo plane. And so finding the small moments and really, really tuning into those small moments. Nature is huge for me. And I was on a hike with my friend Annie, and I would be, or my friend Carolyn, and I'm like, we got to stop. I have to smell, smelling the forest and smelling the dirt and smelling the dropping leaves. Those are really small moments that I feel fill the well. Yeah. I don't think hope and resilience are synonyms, but they're certainly siblings. And so, like, what does it mean to fill the well with those small moments? And like adjacent, but a part of this is like when I can't totally see through the fog in my own world, I can see those around me crystal clear. And like celebrating the folks around me, like my friend who passed her boards, just like going ham, like on to a text with her and just like celebrating, or my friend who just got a job, like celebrating that. My niece who just turned 1, like my sister got her a bounce house. It was so like ridiculous, but totally worth it. So like finding those, like, yeah, celebrating someone else gives me a lot of hope. Like when I see the people that I love succeed, and that includes my students too, and my colleagues, like watching students dance in class and like discover something new or make a project. They're so, and I mean, I'm so blessed to work with so many incredible artists, and like they astound me every day. And there's, yeah. And I would say, like, to wrap all this up, it's like, how do I pay attention? How am I paying attention with intention? What am I paying attention to? And when I start to lose that, like, how do I, like Shruthi said this, like, how do I come back to my center? If I can't tune into what I'm paying attention to, gotta come back here so then I can literally zoom back out into the Zoom room.
Wow, so many good ideas here. So I'm going to shift a little bit. You know, I've been trying really hard to keep the news off and stay off of social media today. Like that's one of my practices that's helping me to survive this particular day. But it caught up with me. I got in my car this afternoon and the radio was on, and the commentator on the radio was starting to talk about reconciliation and soul searching as a nation. And okay, I turned off the radio because I'm not ready to listen to that today. But it did sort of get me thinking about, well, resilience and soul searching and sort of that intersection, you know. And I was thinking, you know, for me, the first time when the floor really fell out from underneath me was when I was a young adult, and it was right after September 11th, and my grandfather was dying, and it was just like grief everywhere I looked every day, right? And that was sort of like the first time where I thought to myself, things will never be okay again. And if, spoiler alert, they were, like, things were okay again, but they were different, right? Like things were different. And we can live inside of both of those things. And so to fast forward, you know, the last 4 years have presented lots of moments, at least for me, for soul searching and wondering if things will be okay again, which is deep. But what I really want to ask is, like, inside of this world at the moment where it feels like sometimes things are too heavy, sometimes things are too imperfect, how does that find its way into your work? Does it affect the work that you're making or the way that you're existing inside of dance, in all of the ways that you're existing with and inside of dance? Or does it not show up in terms of, you know, it might be making quote unquote political work. On the other hand, maybe it simply shifts the way that you work. So thinking about that question, I'll kind of open it up for anyone who wants to jump in.
I want to jump in this case because it's really not my like personal choreography or work. I think for me, it's been so I've been in this country for 20 years, and my sister has been running this dance class for 25 years, and so is the Indian Dance Educators Association is 25 years old, and so we have now discovered that there are more than 4,000 Indian American students learning Indian classical dance right in the DMV area, not even anywhere else, just right in the DMV area. I'm sure nationally there's so many more. And they all spend like minimum 8 to 10 years learning this dance form. It's really intense. They start at 5. They go through this whole rigorous like curriculum, and then a lot of them do they do something called an Aningetram or a Ranga Pravesham, where they enter the stage. So that means they're ready to take their dance to a next level of becoming a professional. So that's their stepping to the next stage. And a lot of children here who learn dance do that at 18 and go off to college. So they don't really have a pipeline to become a dancer. I mean, like a professional dancer. And there aren't like enough dance companies to be hiring them. There's not like auditions. Like it's you learn with the teacher, you work with your teacher, you work with your dance company. And especially in the last 4 years, it's kind of become all the more like I feel urgent that I need to get the word out that this is artistic dance form. It is not a cultural representation. It is really important that these kids who learn it and who are learning it here, maybe the teachers initially came from India and they've moved here, but they've made their homes here. And this is the second generation, third generation of students learning this dance, and they're Americans. And so I feel this urgency of them, of the style of their dance, of their work to be recognized as an artistic discipline, artistic dance form. And because, you get invited, yeah, we wanted something Indian, so we invited you. I'm like, no, invite us because you want somebody who's artistically, good. And that's what it should be about, just like any other dance form. So that representation, I think, also comes from that urgency of representation, and elevating the dance form comes from the need to be recognized as Americans, because I'm raising 2 brown Americans. And so it's really important for me, for them to be as much as the part of the tapestry, being proud of who they are and where they're coming from. So that kind of is probably what my pressure is, because I see all these kids, they're extremely talented. They're all in like good schools. They're doing dance and they're continuing it, but it's also part of their identity. And so I feel that's a good way to be that cultural bridge and take it to the next level.
Lovely. Thank you. Other thoughts? Do you find the politics of the last few years affecting or infecting your work, or not so much?
I want to piggyback off a question that you asked Erin earlier of, will things be okay, or similar to that? I think, I know for Black and brown people in this country, it's never been okay to begin with. And I think that there is an awakening to white America that has always been so, or because growing up, there was never a time when I didn't know that racism didn't exist. But I do think, and I have been seeing within my generation, especially, the sense of activism. Like, we already knew, and we will be quick to check you if somebody came and approached us the wrong way. However, I think that we are growing up in a way, like I said, speaking for my generation, of being activists in our workplace, being activists with our communities, with our friends, with our families, in a way that is moving towards real change. However, we cannot do it alone. And I realized that I had to be more active in including that in my work and how I speak to the people that I work with, making sure that when I notice things, I'm not just letting it pass by anymore, that I'm acknowledging discomforts and things that encourage systemic racism, just eliminating that. So I think that it's a sense of activating a voice that I have grown into during this time. Not that I ever didn't know that these issues didn't exist, but I'm definitely stepping into, as I'm growing up, my activism in that.
If I can chime in, I actually come with, I guess, because of the two careers that I kind of married together in my life, my approach is completely different than the usual. So in my legal career, having achieved that place of being a judge, coincidentally having been appointed in January 4 years ago, to get at the same time of the change of the administration, brought about also a change of flexibility of what I could or couldn't do within the arena because of restrictions of my new position. And so I do and have always been surrounded by dance and see how people use dance to communicate activism, to show these, turmoils, ideas. I can't, right? Because I'm restricted by my other career on what I can actually express to a certain extent. So I took a cue from ancestors, the creators actually, and the ones who gave birth to flamenco many years ago, Jews, Moors, and Gypsies, three groups of individuals who at the time were highly persecuted and who were going through turmoil themselves. And the way that they gave birth to flamenco was they escaped to the cuevas de Sacromonte, to the caves of Sacromonte, in hiding for their life. And they used flamenco not as a way to showcase that struggle that they were having in that persecution, but instead to celebrate life and celebrate their emotions, celebrate their experiences, good and bad. It was all about life. And I think that's how they got hope that they would continue forward, by continuing to celebrate what we all experience today as part of life. Deep love, deep sadness, loss, happiness, romance, all of that is what they decided to showcase and use flamenco singing, song, dance to actually showcase. So I went back to that and I used my dance to actually go there just like they did and get myself out, not only by need, right? Because I have to marry these two careers, not only by need of some restrictions that I have on me, but also because of need for my mental sanity and to find that space where this is not my sole focus, so that I don't get necessarily consumed by it. I can do that here, but I have this space of dance that provides to me a means to focus on something else and actually to celebrate life. Because no matter what, in my view, no matter what is going around us, we get one chance to live this thing called life, and we have to celebrate it despite all the challenges that present to us along the way.
Thank you, Estela. So we have a couple of questions from our audience, and I think we'll take a couple of those. Eliza asks, to the educators, how do you instill or inspire hope in your students within the process of instilling or inspiring hope in yourself? What do you think? As they're thinking about it, also say that this is a good time. If you have a burning question, this would be the time to post it so that we could respond.
I'm so hesitant to jump in because this is a student that I work with closely. So I know she gets to hear from me all the time, but I think honesty and earnestness, and going together.
So I think I like what my sister does. So every class, because it's all, I mean, even when it was in person, but now especially when it's in Zoom, she gives the children space to just chat. So to talk about their week, talk about their day, like, to kind of feel like they can be their own persons as well as dance students. So give them that space, because I mean, we get like hung up over, oh, we have an hour of class, we have to teach and dance and everything. But then it's also like equally important to just let these children and students feel whole before then they can learn. And then in the same way, every day she comes back with these really fun stories. Each one has something to share. And in fact, my daughter learns from her. So I get like two sides of all the information. And I think despite everything else is happening, because these kids are like in virtual school, virtual dance, virtual everything, they find this interaction what kind of takes them forward. They look forward to sharing the story or whatever it is.
Great, thank you. So Annika writes, how do you think that being virtual will impact dance performance and practice in the future? Meaning past COVID times, what have you learned that you can apply to your future works? And I think maybe we'll think about this question not only in terms of work as a performer or dance maker, but as an administrator, for instance, right? Like thinking about all the hats that you wear. What do you think is coming? What happens next? I'm gonna send this one to Jessica first. I think we haven't heard from you in a bit. What are your thoughts, Jessica?
Well, I think that we have been, or I have personally been like super experimental with different technologies that and I think Anastasia was saying this before, with different technologies that I hadn't used before, and upgrading myself, as they say, and allowing myself to be more playful with different tricks and transitions and music. And I see that artists are really allowing themselves to redefine what dance and movement and capturing those things within the virtual realm really are. And how to recreate narratives in interesting, really cool ways. I think that those are going to be the lasting things. In terms of, that's what I'm going to say about that right now. I'll toss it to somebody else.
I preach the good word of adaptability quite often and quite thoroughly. And wow, have we been doing that? I think what is fascinating about this time is witnessing folks like trying to become to fit in or to keep up or to match or to not lose their relevancy, or to like there are these interesting like impulses that come in this kind of unsteady like state that we happen to be in. And one of the things, and like I've felt that energy, like living in the city and living in the world. It's like, blah, blah, blah. And I think the thing that I will keep with me as we move forward, and like what this has done for me, is like, in order to adapt, how do I go deeper? And I know that relates to what I said earlier, but like it's already inside of me. And how can I find that thing that's there that meets what's here? I am an improviser. I am a creator. I am a critical thinker. I am a problem solver. I can do this. You know, like I like think of like y'all, I'm on TikTok now and it's a whole big thing and like talk about a time suck. But like watching these kids give themselves affirmations, like that's how I feel like I have to be, where like rather than try to and I'm not saying don't become, like please become, you know, become a camel, like whatever you want to be it. But like what's here that meets you there.
Love, go for it.
Oh, sorry. When you were saying become and it's like my 15-year-old keeps talking about manifestation, and yeah, so it's. I feel that the biggest way forward is to not assume we're going back to something. There isn't going back to anything. I think that's the key that we have to take forward. Yes, hold on to things that really matter, like practices that really made a difference now that you can take with you forward. But there isn't going back. Even if you go back into prosceniums, it might not look the same. We don't know how many years it'll take to fill up a Strathmore Music Hall of like 1,800 people. We don't know, even if we get a vaccine next year. So how I see things are going to happen is first of all, like Jessica was saying, video production, film, and Anastasia was saying she bought all these different like equipment and stuff. You take like a 2D performance and make it a visually 3D experience, so people start like getting into it, because it's so easy to flip a screen the minute you're in front of a computer. So how do you keep that audience engaged? So that would be the first one, right? Unfortunately, in some ways, you are competing with Disney when you're doing a live performance on screen. But how do you enhance that quality? That's one. Second, I think the first place you'll start seeing in-person performances is local, hyper local, like dance place, art walk, or things, places like that, that's hyper local, that people trust each other, can congregate together in small numbers, look at a dancer, appreciate the work, and feed off each other. That would be the first hyper local like feeding. Because even now, who are you seeing in your regular lives in the last 7 months? People you really trust and care in person. So that's how the art will kind of first go around, then innovative presentations. And then I think everybody, like especially students who are going to be graduating, like Britta was mentioning that there are students who just graduated or they're going to graduate. Like, what is it that makes them, like, that's one thing that makes you different. What makes you stand out is what you should focus on and show the world. Yes, market the life out of yourself, because that's the only way you'll get noticed. That's the only way you can find yourself, because all your classmates are amazing. So, but each of you have one unique skill. And what is that? That's what you should find a way to elevate, find connections, people. If it means for the next 6 months, all you're going to do is watch like 1,000 videos, meet people, like do informational interviews. Do it. That's what it takes. Do it. But don't lose heart. There is going to be a way you can get ahead in your career, in your life, in art. Art has been with our human society forever. We've seen drawings on like rocks, like from the whatever ages. So it'll be there for us.
Literally forever.
Yes.
Like forever.
Anyone else? Oh, Jessica, please.
I would like to, yes, and Shruti. Yes, do all of those things. And the grind is not worth your mental health. So, like, market yourself, put yourself out there. Absolutely. Find those things that make you unique and do everything you can to make them shine. And we need to stay steady as she goes right now, within ourselves, within knowing our core values, within feeling safe within ourselves and in our environments, especially online, where all these crazy people are online all the time. Just, yeah, really, really keep keep that, third eye centered on yourself. And I think, Britta, you said earlier, your center and where you're operating and working from, because that's going to save us all.
So we're going to pause.
I'm sorry. It's just like, woo, gets me fired up. Values. Yeah.
Thank you, Bernice. Trisha's coming back. So I'm going to take another audience question. Sarah asks, are you growing to love the digital space? How do we grow to appreciate a space that is so easy to despise? What do you think?
We have an up and down relationship, very much so. It depends on the day, it depends on my internet, depends on the Wi-Fi, depends on my students. It's very up and down. So it's definitely a day-by-day situation. However, I do enjoy learning the new things that I'm learning. I found like new tasks and different skills that I'm learning. So I enjoy that aspect of it for sure. But it definitely has the downfalls.
Do you want to say something, Britta? I have another question.
I'm going to quote my friend Inertia, my friend and collaborator. Like, I'm such a sucker for this, where it's like, I just want you to know that I see you. And so I get really close and I like exude all this energy and it's like, rah! And I'm like performing, like I heighten that performance. And afterwards I'm like, exhausted from that. And so like Inertia keeps reminding me, she's like, you can be engaged and you can sit back. Like, oh, damn. Dang. I mean, whoops. Like, yes, I sure can. So sometimes, and also it's okay to play. Like, it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. Like, it's like, it feels like we're all like talking news anchors, and like, what does it mean to pick up the computer and move spaces and, play.
That's great. I think this is a kind of a popcorn round question. Alejandra is asking, how do you deal with the challenge of space limitations while teaching? But maybe we could think of that more broadly as well. Like, how are you dealing with space, be that dancing from home, etc.? What are you working with?
Actually, in my house, space is kind of a premium. I have 2 daughters going on virtual school every day, 9 to 3. And then my husband is on his work all day. And then here I am. And I keep like hiding in my backyard. And I'm worried once it gets cold, what am I going to do? Because that's become my like sanctuary. Because I think in this pandemic, we've all, I don't know about you guys, organized your homes, organized your rooms, watched home edit, so we've found different ways to make ourselves comfortable in our own spaces. And I think that extends even into your dancing space or whatever. At the end of the day, that's what resilience is. Like, you don't have the perfect studio, but you will still dance. So you can dance with your students or your company members. You will dance in your apartment, you'll dance in your dining room, whatever it takes. And I think as dancers, like Britta was saying, we're all adaptive and flexible because the choreography changes when you improv. So we just improv in life too.
For me, what I do is flamenco, right? Which has very specific requirements. You got to have the right shoes, you got to have the wooden floor. So how do you make that work for your students who are at home and probably don't have that wooden floor? They have the shoes, but they don't have the wooden floor, or they have a wooden floor they don't want to mess up, right? So you give options and you work with your students and you do the research to make it more accessible. So that's what we've done. What can we do to keep people moving and engaged in this art style that has such specific requirements? Well, you can go take your chance, go to Home Depot, buy a plywood, but my neighbor is going to complain. We make a lot of noise, right? So we looked for all of the it's instead of focusing on the main aspect of the dance, which is that footwork, we looked globally as to what truly is that we do, what everything that it encompasses. And we realized, well, you know what? We got castanets. They make noise, but they don't require a special floor, special shoes. You just have to have castanets. How great would it be to just offer a class on that particular aspect of flamenco? And we do a lot of arms, and that doesn't require a lot of footwork or any footwork at all. So let's work on that aspect of that technique. And it was starting to extrapolate from the bigger picture, the smaller aspects of what we do and have to offer to accommodate to the restrictive environment of everybody's home. We found that actually got people engaged, that actually got people wanting to do more, and they started to just even do footwork barefoot on carpet just because they wanted to keep engaged. So it's that moment of, my goodness, adaptability. And I did have students that I never even realized for a month of virtual classes, you've been doing this on a carpet with no shoes? Oh my God, you blow my mind. So we had to think outside of the box on how we're going to make our very specific dance fit within the confines of everybody else. It wasn't so restrictive. We had our space as teachers, and we had it. It's thinking about what to offer everybody else without assuming that everybody else had the facilities that we had to do what we did. So yeah, that's how we offer.
So I'm noticing that we're just about at time. I have one last playful question, a little bit playful, for each of the panelists. Would you share one maybe surprising or fun thing that you've been doing, perhaps not at all dance related, but maybe, to keep going and carrying on the last 8 months? Jessica, let's start with you. We'll just move around.
Oh goodness. One fun thing. It was boring. I've got these 4 walls. No. Until last week, I'm also a fieldwork facilitator. So I was facilitating the 8-week process through with our lovely friends at Dance Place. And that was being in that process with makers and people that are experimenting and playing around was really awesome.
Shruti, will you go next?
Let me unmute myself. Yeah, our book club actually, we for the first few weeks of the lockdown, we met every week and we played different drinking games over Zoom to keep us going and get us away from our children. We said we're a book club, not the word. But then the other exciting thing I did today was I just started a stone carving class at the Glen Echo Studios, and I think it was the most amazing thing I've done in the last 8 months, because it was tactile. I just lost myself for like the 2 hours I was there, and I just loved it.
Britta. You're muted, Britta.
I'm back. I've been doing a lot of puzzles, and right now the puzzles are holding up my computer. And my assistant here, which is a body form that I borrowed from an AU alum, I make clothes and costumes and things like that, but I've been making clothes for myself. So today this is the most recent thing I made. And today she's like Wally with my light. So wait, here, I'm going to turn her so you can see. So she's a bit of like, or maybe she's more like the light from Pixar, Bounce Bounce. But yeah, I made this shirt. I screwed up the collar. I got to redo it. But it's, I like Shruti, like getting my hands on something and like thinking like very task-based. It's great.
Anastasia.
I have been doing my own hair. YouTube is a blessing.
Nice. And Estela.
I have been binge watching on Drag Race. I am like a hardcore fan, and this gave me the platform to kind of escape and love my queens and adore my queens and get to know my queens and follow my queens and even go to Drive-In Drag Race when that happened in Annapolis and just go all out for my queens. That is my guilty pleasure.
Erin, what are you doing?
Well, I will say, so I have a daughter, and she has not been in school. She's been at grammar school this fall, but I get to see her a lot more than I did last year. And so a lot of my fun things are with her, getting to rake leaves and carve pumpkins recently, and have lots of extra cuddles and dance parties. So it's really good. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us here this evening and talking, like, so many ideas. I hope that our guests are finding a few things just to put in their pocket. I keep reminding myself to keep breathing. When I spoke with Britta earlier today, she said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm breathing." Sometimes that's the thing we can hold on to, right? So keep breathing, everybody, please. And the other reminder I'll share is that this is community, right? Here are people in our community in the DC area, and to reach out. I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. So I'm gonna say goodnight and welcome back, Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. And thank you so much to each of you here in the space. So grateful for you sharing and being honest and being in dialogue. And yes, this virtual space is, it's weird, but it can be good. So thank you. And to each of you joining us tonight, thank you so much for being with us. Thanks also to our interpreters, Trisha and Vernice. If you're looking for other ways to connect with Dance Place, we have virtual classes available for all ages on our website, danceplace.org. Coming up, we have Soul-Defined Verses with Ladies of Hip Hop on Saturday, November 14th at 6:30. After that, it's Exquisite Frame, Saturday, November 21st at 6:30, curated by Britta Joy Peterson, who you saw here tonight, as well as Candace Scarborough. I'll also shout out from AU that we have Choreo Lab 2020 on November 13th and 14th, and you can learn more about that in the link in the chat. Make sure you're following Dance Place on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on our upcoming programming. Thank you again for joining us. Take care, and we hope to see you soon.